Okay. My name is Zehui Yin, and the topic I'm going to present today is toward equitable service provision, a catchment area analysis of bike-share Toronto system. I'm an undergraduate student at University of Toronto Scarborough. I majored in economics and management studies and minor in jazz and applied statistics. And I work as a research assistant in Suburban Mobilities Cluster at Department of Human Geography at UTSC. And I'm also an incoming geography PhD student at McMaster University this fall. And this project is completed by 3 undergraduate students at UTSC. And it's completed for the course a GS research projects in winter 2024 and supervised by Professor Glenn. So the topic we're going to talk about is first I'm going to talk about the background and motivation and the research questions and the data and the methods we use and the results and some discussion. So in the past 20 to 30 years, cities around the world have increasingly taken an interest in expanding and promoting active mobility means and these networks. And bike-share Toronto is Toronto's official adopted bike-share system since 2011. And bike-share not only inherits the benefits of cycling, but also provide additional incentives such as convenience and financial savings for its users. Bike-share also faces challenges and barriers that may limit its accessibility and equity for diverse populations, especially due to its stocked-in nature and the rising first and last mile issues. And bike-share has the potential to combat social exclusion by providing improved mobility options, but this will require careful operation and management. And this is all the bike-share stations in Toronto. And it's quite obvious to see that most of the stations are located in the downtown Toronto area. And if we move further, for example, into Scarborough, there's like way fewer stations. And we know that different population groups are not uniformly distributed throughout the city. So this clustering of the placement of these bike-share stations would cause some problems. So it's kind of expected before running an analysis, we know that kind of expecting to see some population subgroups will be like oversupplied by the bike-share service, and some population subgroups will be undersupplied by the bike-share service, simply because the spatial distribution of the bike-share stations. And the research questions we're gonna answer in this analysis is how equitable is the access to bike-share Toronto for all Toronto residents, especially for population subgroups based on gender, income, or ethnicity, and which bike-share Toronto service areas have higher or lower levels of equity, and where should the system expansion be prioritized to improve the service provision equity. And the data we use is 4 data sources. The first is the bike-share ridership data we access from City of Toronto open data, and the bike-share station data we get it from the Toronto Parking Authority through GBFS. It's real-time station data, and the road network data from OpenStreetMap, and also we use the 2021 Canadian Census data from Statistics Canada. So we first calculate the isochrone around the stations, and then use the isochrone to conduct some further analysis like k-means clustering, and at the end, we did a suitability analysis, like adding all the raster together to identify priority zones. So first we did is a catchment area analysis. So to cover the coverage area of each bike-share stations, we calculated the 15-minute walking distance network buffers around each bike-share stations using R5R packaging R. And to avoid the overlapping in the computed catchment areas, we create Voronoi polygons based on Euclidean distance for each stations and intersect them with the network buffers to get the non-overlapping coverage areas for each bike-share station. So here is the computed non-overlapping catchment areas for each bike-share stations in Toronto. And it is colored by the total ridership in 2023. So basically, we can see a lot of high riderships happens in the downtown area. And at the edge of the system, the ridership is relatively lower compared to the downtown area. And then we did an area-weighted interpolation to construct a metric quantifying the service provision equity. We calculated 8 social demographic variables using 2021 Canadian census data. And for each census dissemination areas in the city of Toronto, we computed percentage of female residents, Indigenous people, white people, Chinese people, Black people, Latino people, and people with household total income below 40,000 in 2020, and with total household income above 100,000 in 2020. So basically, we are interested in whether there's like vulnerability population based on gender, ethnicity, and income. So how does the area-weighted interpolation works? We use the aerial packaging R to reshape the census data into the non-overlapping coverage area. And how this actually works is basically assuming the population within each census dissemination area is uniformly distributed. So what that basically means is, let's assume this black dot is a catchment area. So basically this is a Berkshire station in Toronto. And this polygon, the green polygon, is computed 15-minute walking distance around this Berkshire station. And these two underlying rectangles, this blue one and this purple one, they are assume them to be two census dissemination areas. And we are basically assuming within each census dissemination areas, the population are homogeneous, which means they are the same. So they are like evenly distributed. It's kind of it's a generalization, but because we're using census data, it's kind of an assumption we have to make because we can't get more detailed data beyond census, basically. And then we just calculate the overlapping area size and using the overlapping area size to reweight the census data into each catchment areas. So formally, the area-weighted interpolation involves 4 steps. So basically, it's first an intersection between the census dissemination areas and the coverage areas, and calculate the weight for each intersected feature. So basically, it's the area size of the intersected polygon. And then we estimate the share of population value occupying intersected feature. Basically, it's the census data times the weight. So it's simply like a weighted average. And then at the end, we sum it out all together to each catchment areas. And after calculating for each Toronto Berkshire stations and the whole Toronto Berkshire system-wide social demographics were calculated also as a weighted average, but it's based on ridership at each station. And from the ridership data, there are 2 types of riderships. The first is the annual ridership, and the second is causal ridership. So the annual ridership referring to the riders who actually buys a annual pass, and the causal ridership is basically all other riders. So annual rider only accounts for about 6% of the total trips in 2023. And similarly, the Toronto-wide average was calculated as a weighted average based on population count at each census dissemination areas. And then we applied the K-means clustering in ArcGIS Pro to the 8 social demographic variables of Berkshire stations in order to group them into 5 clusters based on their attribute similarities. And from these 5 clusters, we identify existing catchment areas that are relatively more equitable compared to others. And this is a side-by-side box plot showing the clusters. So basically cluster all the existing Berkshire stations into 5 groups. And as we can see that this red line, so group 3, it's kind of pops out as the most not equitable one because it oversupplies high-income residents and also oversupplies white people, but it's undersupplied all like other minority groups, including Black people, Chinese people, low-income residents, Indigenous people, and Latino people. So the cluster 3 we classify as the less equitable catchment areas, and then we group all other groups into the relatively more equitable catchment areas. We use this in the later on the suitability analyses. And in preparation for the suitability analyses, we also conducted a hotspot analysis, which is the local Moran's eye statistics to identify the census DAs that have high or low values of the social demographic variables compared to the surrounding areas. And we employ a spatial weight matrix constructed using 40 nearest neighbors methods along with raw standardized bias-square kernel function, which mathematically define as that equation. But visually, it looks like something like this. So basically, that says it's census dissemination areas that are further away, like geographically, the distance between two census dissemination areas are longer than the connection between them are weaker. And it's a gradual process of declining the connectivity, how connected the two census DAs are. And we choose this spatial weight matrix and this function is because it's a gradual decline and it gives more weight to nearby census dissemination areas and give less weights to like census dissemination areas that are further apart. And then the final part, we did the suitability analysis to identify the priority areas. So we identify social demographic hotspots with a confidence level exceeding 90% and convert them into raster format with cell values equal to the original social demographic variables. And we create an approximate 1 kilometer buffer zone raster around the equitable catchment areas identified by the cluster analyses. So what that means is, first look at the left-hand side map. So we basically filters all the red areas. So these red and orange areas is the hotspot with 90% confidence level, which that means is, for this map, it shows the local Moran's eye value of the low-income population in Toronto. So this means this red areas is a hotspot of low-income population in Toronto. So this means in the downtown area, there are more low-income population compared to elsewhere in Toronto. So we identify all these red zones out and convert to a raster format. And for this, for the right-hand side map is the buffer of the equitable station catchments, which is based on the cluster analysis I just talked about. So this red zone is the not equitable catchment, which is the cluster 3. And the light blue is the equitable catchments, which are all the rest of the clusters from the cluster analyses. And the darker blue area is the buffer of equitable catchments. This is about a 1 kilometer buffer around the more equitable catchments. And we are using this is because when identifying for a priority zone of existing, for the bachelor system, we want to prioritize areas that are nearby to the existing stations. We don't want to like find an area that's with no nearby stations, because that definitely makes no point of system expansion to somewhere there's no nearby station. And yeah, so for the suitability analysis, we compute a weighted sum of these raster layers in ArcGIS Pro to ascertain the most suitable areas for the expansion of the actual Toronto system. And the weight for the social demographic hotspot layers was set to the inverse of respective means. And the buffer layer was assigned a weight of 1.2 to balance the importance of proximity to existing stations against the needs to serve underserved populations. And this is the system-wide results. And this above graph shows the percentage of the like different type of subpopulations served by the bachelor system. So for example, let's pick this white category here. So this actually means right, draw. So for this like white category, we can see like it's around 50%. So that actually means is that for all the residents live within the catchment areas of bachelor Toronto system, about like 51% of them are white people. And in comparison, like let's say Black people here, and we can see it's like definitely lower than 10%. So that means for all the residents live within the 15-minute walking catchment areas of bike-share system, less than 10% of them are Black people. And when we look at this, we don't know how this compared to the Toronto average, right? So we want to know, comparing to Toronto average, how that actually differs. Because maybe in the whole Toronto, there just happen to be, like all Toronto residents happen to be 50% of them actually white. So if that's the case, then Bike-Share Toronto is actually providing equitable service to Toronto residents, because whole Toronto, if there's just 50% white people, and it happens to also supply 50, like among all the residents have access to Bike-Share Toronto, is also 50% of them are white, then it's actually equal to the Toronto average. Then in that case, it will be quite equitable. But however, if we look at the graph below it, we see that, for example, for white, it's a huge oversupply. So which that means is actually in the whole Toronto, there's only about 42% of the Toronto residents are white. But among all the residents who have access to Bike-Share Toronto, there are about 50% of them are white. So this is kind of an equity concern. And also there's oversupply to low-income people. That's a good thing. But there's an undersupply to female residents and undersupply to Black residents as well. You can see like there's a 4 percentage points undersupply to Black people, and there's about 2 percentage point undersupply to female people. So this, at the aggregate level, Bike-Share Toronto is providing good access to low-income people, but is undersupplying for Black people and female residents. So employing the catchment area analyses, we discover a disparity in service provision. There's an oversupply to white, Chinese, and low-income population contrasted with the undersupply to Black and female demographics in Toronto. And these findings indicate a significant opportunity for enhancing the system's equitable distribution of services. And then we want to identify where are the more suitable areas for system expansion. And showing in this map, the areas with a higher weighted suitability score is more suitable for system expansion in terms of improving the equity performance of service provision. So this shows that the areas like Yorkdale and Scarborough West Hill and Jane Finch areas, so basically a lot of areas in North York, is actually more suitable for system expansion. Like partly because there are already a lot of stations there, so it's kind of prioritizing to expand around existing station, but it's also the population subgroups there. It's also like more vulnerable population groups, like people of color lives there. And so based on the suitability analyses, the areas with the highest suitability scores, including the Scarborough's West Hill, North York, Yorkdale, and predominantly Jane and Finch areas. And our analysis is subject to two primary constraints. The first is due to the unavailability of historical data for Bike-Share stations. Our study is based on the real-time station data accessed on January 8, 2024. And also the delineation of the non-overlapping catchment areas was performed using Euclidean distance instead of a network distance. This is like a software constraint. The software doesn't support a network distance when constructing Voronoi polygons, basically. And yeah, that's everything. Thanks for listening. And if you want to find more about this project, you can scan the QR code. You can access the online dashboard, like shows this project, and also you can access the report for this project. And for any question or further information, you can email me, and you can find more projects, my projects on my websites. And